This video is for 2.2.2 Visual Analysis. The big concept of this lesson is that you will learn about the principles of design, the elements of design, and how they are used to complete a visual analysis. Let's first start by taking a look at the art of design. When you strategically apply visual elements and principles of design, it can result in tasteful and visually appealing products and lead to more impactful and effective products. Selecting an effective blend of visual design principles and elements is not easy, but can enhance the appeal and the perceived usability of your product. All of these concepts focus around a product's aesthetics. Aesthetics are the core design principle that defines a design's pleasing qualities. Now let's talk about the aesthetic usability effect. First of all, what is it? Experimental research confirms that many people perceive more aesthetic designs to be easier to use than less aesthetic designs, and more aesthetic designs inspire a positive attitude toward a product. In fact, even if a product is more usable than another more attractive design, the user may prefer the more attractive design and overlook functional or performance issues. First visual impressions can influence perceptions of quality and usability for a long time. So how can it be applied? If you strive to create a good first visual impression of a design, you can then strategically use visual design elements and principles to create an aesthetic design that will appeal to your target market. We're now going to transition into both the design elements and principles. We're going to begin by looking at the different elements of design. There are 7 of these elements in total. They consist of line, color, value, shape, form, space, and texture. Let's start by taking a closer look at line. Line is defined as the path of a point moving through space. It can be used to define a boundary, indicate volume, create perspective and depth, create textures and patterns, suggest movement, and imply emotion. There are different types of line that are used when designing. First, we have vertical lines, which characterize dignity, formality, stability, and strength. We also have horizontal lines that represent calm, peace, and relaxation. We have diagonal lines, which give the sense of movement, action, and activity. And then curved lines, which give the sense of freedom and a soothing mood. Next, let's take a look at color. Color is described by a number of qualities, including hue, which is your base color, the value, lightness and darkness of the color, or saturation, which is the purity or intensity relative to gray values. Color has an immediate and profound effect on a design. It can determine the mood that's viewed by the user. Cool colors tend to be calming and soothing, while warm colors are often implied for excitement and busyness. Next, we have value, which is the relative lightness or darkness of a color, object, or shape. Value allows us to perceive shapes and the illusion of 3D objects on a 2D surface through shading. Now we have shape. Shape is defined by 3 different types of shape, including geometric, mechanical, and organic. Following shape, we have form, which is the 3D volume or solid, and it's often implied on a 2D surface by careful use of value. This is how we make shapes look 3-dimensional on paper. Here's an example of form. Pyramids are often used as an example of form as they are incredibly distinctive and easy to make 3D on paper. Next, we have an example to the left of space. Space is the area between and around parts of an image or the implied depth of that image. We have 2 different types of space, both positive and negative. Space is evident in images with depth. Different types of space include open and uncluttered or cramped and busy space. Then we have texture. Texture is the surface look or feel in an image or on an object. A texture can be smooth, which reflects more light and has more intense color, or rough, which absorbs more light and appears darker. Here you have several examples of different textures: smooth, rough, and fluffy. Next, let's take a look at the 7 design principles. These are different than the elements. The 7 basic principles we'll look at include balance, emphasis, contrast, rhythm, proportion, unity, and economy. Balance is both visual and physical balance. The distribution of elements within a design are then balanced with each other. The types of balance include symmetrical, which is formal, asymmetrical, which is informal, and radial. Symmetrical or formal balance is when the elements within the design are identical in visual weight in relation to a center line or axis. Asymmetrical or informal balance is when the elements within the design are not identical but arranged to provide a balanced visual weight. Radial balance is when the distribution of components in a circular pattern are focused around a central point. Next, we have emphasis. Emphasis is used to draw attention to one area. Emphasis is created by using a focal point, which is a feature in a design that attracts the eye. This can be achieved through size, placement, shape, contrast, and the use of lines. This is an example of emphasis using color. You'll notice that the interior of the vehicle, as well as the clothes that are worn by the person in the image, are all dark in color, in contrast to the red buckles on the seatbelt. Now, continuing with the concept of contrast, contrast is the degree of relative difference between elements. Contrast can be achieved through color and texture. Contrast can be used to emphasize an element of a design. Note that in this example, the yellow color emphasizes the drivetrain of the car. Next, let's take a look at rhythm. Rhythm is repeated use of line, shape, color, texture, or pattern, and creates a harmonious pattern or sequence. The types of rhythm include regular, random, gradated, and graduated. Regular rhythm is when an element is repeated at the same repetition or interval, such as in a brick pattern or in the sconces viewed in the image above. Random rhythm is the repetition of the element in a random or situated at irregular intervals. That means that an object is repeated, but it does not appear to be repeated in a specific pattern. Gradated rhythm is when the repeated element is identical with the exception of one detail, such as increasing or decreasing gradually with each repetition. Graduated rhythm is when the repeated element becomes closer or further apart from an original starting point. Next, we'll look at proportion. Proportion is when there is a comparative relationship between elements in a design with respect to size. As an example, we have scale, which is when the proportion or size of an element in relation to other elements can be mathematically calculated. We also have unity, which is the consistent use of design elements. Last, we have economy, which is the use of the bare minimum of elements. This can be achieved by removing extraneous elements. People who often use economy believe that in simplicity there is beauty and that less is more. This is an example of economy. You can see that the shapes are both minimalistic as well as the shadows and the figures pushing the shapes.